New Year, New You. It's a saying that many people try to embody. Around the world, celebrations abound at the start of the new year, albeit with different traditions and customs. In Denmark, unused dishes are thrown at the doors of friends and family members. Spaniards try to stuff 12 grapes in their mouth at midnight for good luck. Here in America, we scramble to find a New Year's kiss at the stroke of midnight, hoping that love carries over for the next 12 months. Whatever way we celebrate and wherever we are, the start of a new year is often met with the reflection on past experiences and the hope for what the future may hold. For some of us, we try to contribute to the future in the form of a resolution. These decisions to do or not to do something are meant to better us in the long run, whether it be economically, emotionally, or physically. The start of the new year was not always a positive experience for Buddy Holly, but by keeping his goals in mind, he managed to keep himself going in the right direction. This episode will focus on Holly's experiences in the early months of 1955 through 1958 and how that time influenced the rest of those years.
That was my pal Glasses, and I'm the Glider. Thanks for tuning in to Frames and Fame. Broadcasting from the Buddy Holly Center, this is Episode 2, New Year's Resolution. This is our second in hopefully a long series of podcasts that will deal largely with Buddy Holly, early rock and roll, and the collection at our museum located at 1801 Crickets Avenue in Lubbock, Texas. Also, don't forget to check out our sister podcast, Wings of War, which focuses on World War II, the American Military Glider Program, and the collection at the Silent Wings Museum.
1955 was a big year for Buddy Holly. This is the year that Buddy graduated from Lubbock High School and started to focus his time almost exclusively on his music career. As mentioned in the previous episode, Holly had two main catalysts around this time in his life that truly helped to shape his musical style. The first was late-night radio programs. This is where Buddy discovered and subsequently began listening to R&B music. Originally influenced by country and gospel songs, R&B helped to give Buddy his rockabilly flair. The raw, emotive, and slurred vocal style and emphasis on rhythmic feeling being something that Holly and his second catalyst, Elvis Presley, became known for. Even though Lubbock in 1955 only had 116,000 inhabitants, the town had a thriving music scene, most often in the form of Saturday night jamborees featuring local talent. The isolation of the city actually helped facilitate the meeting of these two early rock and roll powerhouses. Situated hundreds of miles from the closest metropolitan area, Lubbock, also known as the Hub City, often found itself hosting many out-of-town acts that would normally have played in much bigger cities. When Elvis first came to Lubbock in early January of 1955, he wasn't the headliner, but he certainly was the showstopper. Presley mesmerized the crowd with his voice, dance moves, and his clothes. According to Sonny Curtis, a friend and future member of Buddy Holly's band, Elvis had on an orange sports coat, red pants, and white bucks, which reminded him of a motorcycle headlight. At the time, Buddy did not enjoy the same recognition and success that Elvis did. However, he was not immune to the spotlight. Buddy had been performing on the radio for over a year by 1955, playing country and bop with Bob Montgomery for the majority of the time. By early 1955, the duo was quite popular in the Lubbock area, so much so, in fact, that people would drive out to the radio station to watch the pair through the window, all while listening to the show on their car stereos. Much to the chagrin of Buddy Holly, he was unable to meet Elvis on this occasion. However, he did witness the transformation of his sleepy town into a hopping rock and roll venue. Almost immediately after seeing Elvis play at the Fair Park Coliseum, Buddy and Bob started to take steps to secure their own future in the music world. They changed their business card to read Western and Bop instead of Country and Bop. They filed their first composition with a music publisher, and they started to play more rockabilly music as opposed to the country music they had played previously. Merely 5 weeks later, on February 13th, Elvis would come back through town, and Buddy would get to do much more than just meet him. He would open for him. Buddy opened for Elvis 2 other times that year following that performance. These performances truly helped Buddy bridge the gap between his country roots and his rock and roll future.
1956 started out with a bang for Buddy and the gang. On January 23rd, Buddy Holly, Sonny Curtis, and Bob Montgomery drove to Nashville to sign Buddy's first big record contract. Sonny was signed to play with Buddy, but Bob, due to Buddy wanting to play more rock and roll and Bob trending more towards country music, did not sign the contract with the other 2 musicians. On January 25th, they signed with Decca Records for a 1-year recording contract. The next day, the 26th, the band had their first recording session. During their first recording, the band was able to get 4 songs finished, including Blue Days, Black Nights. Despite recording and signing with Sonny, Buddy's band had rotating members throughout the year. Don Guest would most often play the bass, and Jerry Allison would play the drums intermittently for them. 1956 also saw the first use of Holly Holly instead of his proper family name, Holly Holley. On February 8th, Decca mailed another contract to be signed and returned immediately. However, on this contract, Decca misspelled his last name. He felt that if he returned the contract for a correction, Decca might not send it back, so Buddy signed his name Holly without the E, and it remained that way from then on. A few months later, on April 16th, Decca released the group's first singles. Later on in April, Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly's paths would cross yet again. Elvis performed at the Fair Park Coliseum in Lubbock, where Buddy had opened for him just over a year before. There is even an 8mm color film of Elvis, Buddy, and others hanging out backstage. This year would also plant the seed of fame that would carry Buddy the rest of his career, although he did not know that it would all start by watching a movie. On May 31st, a flick starring John Wayne entitled The Searchers opened in Lubbock. Buddy and his best friend Jerry Allison saw this film and noticed John Wayne's frequent use of the phrase, "That'll be the day." Feeling inspired by the phrase, the duo raced back to Allison's house, and within an hour, they had composed the song, "That'll Be the Day," setting the stage for their meteoric rise the following year.
Decca's contract with the boys expired and was not renewed on January 26, 1957, due to the failure to release a hit record while under their label. Decca ignored the fact that the boys were constrained by the pushing of a country style on them, suppressing the unique talent of Buddy. With the band's future in limbo, Don Guest and Sonny Curtis move on, leaving Buddy and Jerry Allison to try to piece together a new ensemble. The 2 of them met Nikki Sullivan, a fellow Lubbockite who played rhythm guitar and had similar music interests and aspirations. The 3 of them jammed together a few times, and both Jerry and Buddy liked playing with him. In February, the 2 of them invited Nikki to, quote-unquote, try something in Clovis, the city that housed the musician Norman Petty and his small recording studio. On February 25, 1957, Buddy and the boys had their first recording session with Norman Petty in Clovis, New Mexico. They recorded a few songs, most notably I'm Looking for Someone to Love and That'll Be the Day. When interviewed later, Sullivan claimed that they worked way harder on Looking for Someone to Love because they thought that would be the A-side of the record. Despite it taking hours to record the songs, Holly and the boys did not have to pay for the extra time used. This was because Petty uniquely charged by the session, not by the hour like most other recording studios. This allowed for the artist to get the best take without having to worry about how much time it took to get the final product. Shortly after recording in Clovis, the trio decided to become a band and start playing together regularly. This meant that they would need a name. After some debate and laughter, the 3 of them settled on the Crickets. Sullivan, Allison, and Holly found their bass player in Joe B. Malden when they were short a man for a gig they had booked in Carlsbad, New Mexico. Joe was younger than the rest of the band at 16, and he was still in high school, but on the way back from performing, Buddy invited Joe to play with them on a consistent basis. and after a day or so of thought, he agreed to become the fourth member of the Crickets, and that was it. 1957 had created a timeless band whose influence would stretch beyond what any of the members could have imagined.
By January of 1958, Buddy Holly and the Crickets had made it big. That'll Be the Day was a huge hit, and they followed it up by recording and releasing Peggy Sue, another fan favorite. January 8th through 24th of that year, the band performed on America's Greatest Teenage Recording Stars tour, grossing $7,285.74, or nearly $61,000 in today's market. The group played with other stars including the Everly Brothers, Paul Anka, Eddie Cochran, and many others, cementing their rock star status. After the tour, the Crickets barely had time to catch their breath before setting off for Hawaii on their way to their final destination of Australia. The band left New York and on January 27th did 2 shows in Honolulu with Jerry Lee Lewis and Paul Anka. The very next day, they flew to Australia for the Big Show tour, but were unfortunately delayed due to their engine trouble, and arrived on January 29th. During their tour, the Crickets took the land down under by storm, driving their venues wild while stopping in Sydney, Newcastle, Melbourne, and Brisbane. The Crickets got back to the States for a brief moment in mid-February, before flying out on the 27th to London for the English tour, which began March 1st. It was these 2 major tours in 1958 that truly etched Buddy Holly and the Crickets into history, allowing them to connect with their biggest number of fans, because despite their popularity in the United States, overseas the band's prominence was unmatched.
Buddy Holly, following the breakup of his band, embarked on the ill-fated Winter Dance Party tour in January of 1959. The flame that was Buddy Holly's career was prematurely and abruptly extinguished on February 3, 1959, but the resounding effects from his career still linger to this day. We will focus on the Winter Dance Party tour and Buddy's untimely death in our next podcast, which will be available on February 2nd, in remembrance of him, his life, and the influence he had on so many, musical and non-musical alike. Until then, fellow fans, stay safe and rave on.